People talk about it as life happened to Kevin Stefanski, as if people were setting Kevin Stefanski up, as people was talking about whether it was, hey, what was Stefanski doing, right? When we look at it, Kevin Stefanski sabotaged himself. Kevin Stefanski is not a victim. Kevin Stefanski failed because of a couple of reasons. The first and foremost was his lack of communication and people skills. The second thing was a complete lack of innovation. And this is another thing people rarely talk about. The lack of innovation on his offense is what really got him up out of here. I want to take a look at a couple of things.
Kevin Stefanski's got to be fired. Such an idiot, mismanaging what would have been a fantastic comeback from Shedeur Sanders. Almost 400 all-purpose yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception. He had a fantastic game, but he leads a scoring drive down 14 to score with about 4 minutes and some change left. You should kick the field goal to make it a 7-point game, but Ken Stefanski is the smartest guy in the room, goes for 2, doesn't work out. Then it's a 3 and out. Then the Browns get the ball again. Then Shedeur scores another touchdown drive, right? You should be kicking the field goal to tie this thing up, get ready for overtime, but you got to go for 2. Another disastrous play call. Doesn't work out. Browns lose by 2. Kevin Stefanski's got to go, man. This guy, whether it's intentional or not, this guy's always putting the Browns at a disadvantage. Shout out to Kalshi for sponsoring the video. DTB, use that code, get a $10 bonus when you deposit 10, and hey, maybe put a little bit on Shedeur and the Browns getting the upset over the Bears next week.
Hold up. Did you just see what Garrett Bush said about Kevin Stefanski? Because what he revealed about the Cleveland Browns collapse isn't just shocking, it's the kind of insider truth that NFL teams pray never goes public. This isn't your typical player complaint or media speculation. This is a full exposure of what's really been happening behind closed doors in Cleveland. And trust me, by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly why the Browns went from playoff contenders to complete chaos. Let's get into it.
It's going bankrupt and you got a bad manager. That's when people start getting them LinkedIn profiles ready to go. That's when they stop showing up to work because they doing orientation at another job. See the G Bush. They didn't use their last little vacation PTO all the way up for that week because they in orientation. They getting paid at 2 jobs. Right when that orientation over, that PTO run out. Yeah, and they ain't even going no call, no show. They just gonna pull up and they just gonna ghost you. You're like, what happened to Sally? Girl, you know, Sally got that new job over at Progressive. Yeah, girl, I heard why doesn't Cleveland want to win? Why wouldn't Kevin Stefanski prepare his backup? Kevin Stefanski knows his job is not safe. And the reason why Cleveland doesn't, it's not the fact that they don't know how to win, though don't want to win. They have no clue what winning looks like. We haven't won a division since 1989. And what we do is we've been shouldered and we've been told that this guy is a great coach and he's going to get us to the promised land. And listen, fellas, people, until you are in like one of these other cities, Brian Dable just got fired. His offense is 90,000 times better than Kevin Stefanski's. They actually picked Jackson Dart instead of Dylan Gabriel, and he still got fired. This guy's hanging around, not giving backup quarterbacks reps. In what world is this cool? What world? I'm just trying to get at it. Stefanski is dirty coach.
Garrett Bush didn't hold back. In a recent statement that's been making waves across social media and sports talk shows, Bush called out head coach Kevin Stefanski in ways we rarely see from players, current or former. And here's the thing. When someone from inside the organization starts talking like this, you know the problems run deep. Bush essentially said that Stefanski has lost the locker room, that his play calling has been predictable and outdated, and that the coaching staff's inability to adapt has been the primary reason for Cleveland's downfall this season. Now, before we go further, let's establish some context here. The Cleveland Browns came into this season with legitimate Super Bowl aspirations. They had invested heavily in their roster, brought in key free agents, and had a quarterback in Deshaun Watson who, despite his controversies, was supposed to elevate this team to championship level. Kevin Stefanski, the 2020 Coach of the Year, was supposed to be the mastermind bringing it all together. Instead, what we've witnessed is one of the most disappointing seasons in recent Browns history, and that's saying something for a franchise that's seen more than its fair share of disappointment. Garrett Bush's comments didn't come out of nowhere. They're the result of mounting frustration that's been building throughout the season. According to Bush, Stefanski's offensive scheme has become stale and predictable. Defensive coordinators across the league have figured out his tendencies, and instead of adjusting, Stefanski has doubled down on the same approach week after week. Bush pointed out specific games where the play calling was so conservative and predictable that opposing defenses were calling out the plays before they even happened. That's not just bad coaching, that's a fundamental failure to evolve and compete at the highest level. But it goes beyond just the X's and O's. Bush also talked about the culture inside the building, and this is where things get really interesting. He described a disconnect between the coaching staff and the players, a sense that Stefanski and his coordinators are operating in their own world, unwilling to listen to player input or adjust their game plans based on what's actually happening on the field. In modern NFL culture, where player empowerment and collaboration are increasingly important, this kind of top-down, my way or the highway approach is a recipe for disaster. Think about the great coaching staffs in the NFL right now. Andy Reid with the Chiefs, Kyle Shanahan with the 49ers, Dan Campbell with the Lions. These coaches have created environments where players feel heard, where adjustments happen in real time, and where the culture is built on trust and mutual respect. According to Bush, that's the complete opposite of what's happening in Cleveland. He described meetings where player suggestions were dismissed, film sessions where legitimate concerns were brushed aside, and a general atmosphere where speaking up meant being labeled as a problem. Now let's talk about the Deshaun Watson situation, because you can't discuss the Browns' downfall without addressing their quarterback. The Browns made one of the boldest and most controversial moves in NFL history when they traded for Watson and gave him a fully guaranteed $230 million contract. That decision alone put enormous pressure on Stefanski to make it work. But here's what Bush revealed. The offensive system Stefanski runs isn't actually designed to maximize Watson's strengths. Watson is at his best when he can extend plays, work outside the pocket, and use his elite arm talent to make off-script throws. Stefanski's system is rigid, timing-based, and heavily reliant on quick reads and predetermined progressions. It's a fundamental mismatch, and instead of adapting his scheme to fit his franchise quarterback, Stefanski has tried to force Watson into a system that doesn't suit his skill set. Bush went even further, suggesting that Watson has expressed frustration privately about the limitations of the offense. There were reports throughout the season about Watson looking confused on the sideline, about communication breakdowns, and about plays being called that didn't make sense given the game situation. According to Bush, these weren't isolated incidents. They were symptoms of a larger problem. The offensive coaching staff hasn't built a system around their $230 million investment, and that's organizational malpractice at the highest level. The defensive side of the ball tells a similar story. Cleveland's defense was supposed to be elite, led by Myles Garrett, one of the most dominant pass rushers in football. But defensive coordinator Jim Schwartz, who was brought in to fix the defense, has also faced criticism for his stubborn approach. Bush mentioned that defensive players have questioned scheme decisions, particularly in crucial moments of games, where Schwartz has stuck with vanilla coverages against elite offenses, instead of getting creative with blitzes and disguises. The result? The Browns' defense has been carved up by competent offenses all season long, and morale on that side of the ball has tanked. What makes Bush's comments so damaging is that they confirm what many outsiders have suspected all season. The Browns haven't just been unlucky or injured, they've been poorly coached. When you watch their games, you see a team that looks unprepared, a team that makes the same mistakes repeatedly, and a team that never seems to have answers when things go wrong. That falls directly on the coaching staff, and specifically on Kevin Stefanski as the head coach. There's also the issue of accountability, or rather the lack of it. Bush pointed out that when things go wrong in Cleveland, Stefanski has a tendency to deflect blame rather than own mistakes. In press conferences throughout the season, we've seen Stefanski talk about execution rather than scheme, about players not doing their jobs rather than coaches not putting players in position to succeed. That kind of finger-pointing destroys trust in a locker room. Players can handle tough coaching, they can handle being pushed and challenged, but what they can't handle is being thrown under the bus publicly while the coaching staff refuses to acknowledge their own failures. compare that to how other coaches handle adversity. When Dan Campbell's Lions lose, he takes full responsibility. When things go wrong for Andy Reid, he talks about what he could have done better. That's leadership. That's how you maintain respect in a locker room. According to Bush, Stefanski doesn't operate that way, and it's created a toxic environment where players feel like they're being set up to fail and then blamed when things inevitably go wrong. The front office also deserves scrutiny here. General Manager Andrew Barry made the Watson trade, gave Stefanski a roster that should compete for championships, and has backed his head coach through everything. But Bush's comments raise an important question. At what point does ownership step in and demand accountability? The Browns have one of the most talented rosters in the NFL on paper, but they've completely underperformed. When you have that level of talent and still fail, it's a coaching problem, period. What's fascinating about this situation is that it exposes a larger issue in the NFL, the reluctance to move on from coaches who've had past success. Stefanski won Coach of the Year in 2020, and that award seems to have given him immunity from criticism. But winning that award 3 years ago doesn't mean you get a free pass forever. The NFL is a what have you done for me lately league, and what Stefanski has done lately is oversee one of the biggest disappointments in recent memory. Bush's willingness to speak out might be the catalyst that finally forces the Browns to make a change.
There's also the human element to consider here. These are real people whose careers and livelihoods are affected by poor coaching. For younger players on the roster, being stuck in a dysfunctional system with bad coaching can stunt their development and hurt their future earning potential. For veterans, it's wasted years that they can never get back. Bush's comments speak to that frustration, the sense that the window is closing, that opportunities are being squandered, and that nobody in power seems willing to do anything about it. The national media has started picking up on this story, and the reactions have been mixed. Some analysts defend Stefanski, pointing to injuries and the Watson situation as mitigating factors. But others, especially those who've covered the team closely, say that Bush is simply confirming what they've observed all season. The eye test doesn't lie. When you watch Browns games, you see a poorly coached football team, and no amount of excuse-making changes that reality. So where do the Browns go from here? If they move on from Stefanski, who replaces him? What coach wants to walk into a situation with an expensive, controversial quarterback and a roster that's already disappointed? These are legitimate questions without easy answers. But what's clear is that the status quo isn't working. Bush's comments have pulled back the curtain on a dysfunctional organization, and once that happens, it's almost impossible to go back to pretending everything is fine. The Browns' downfall isn't just about one bad season, it's about organizational failures at multiple levels, from coaching to front office decisions to ownership's unwillingness to hold people accountable. Garrett Bush going off on Kevin Stefanski isn't just drama or noise, it's a legitimate wake-up call that the Browns can't ignore. Whether they choose to listen or continue down the same path remains to be seen, but one thing is certain, the truth is out there now, and there's no putting it back in the bottle. This situation is going to define the Browns franchise for years to come. The decisions they make this offseason will determine whether they can salvage what should be a championship window, or whether they'll waste another generation of talent. And if you want to stay updated on how this story develops, hit that subscribe button right now, because we're going to be covering every twist and turn of this Browns saga as it unfolds.